Thank you. Good afternoon. We are here to recognize and honor the life and contributions of Jeff Elman. Thank you all for joining us. Jeff will always be remembered as a truly inspirational and a visionary person. Today, we commemorate Jeff's many contributions that have shaped and redefined the fields of linguistics and social sciences. June 28, 2018. Little did I know, when I started that day, that it would be a day of significant loss. In fact, an irrecoverable loss. That was the day when Jeff departed. And to all of you present here today, and especially to his spouse, Ray Eller, his daughter, Emily, son, Jeremy, your spouses, your grandchildren, I want to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. In fact, what I really mean to say is we are sorry, and I am sorry for our loss. Jeff's departing was our loss. That day, we all lost somebody special. And I know because I lost a friend and I lost a mentor. UC San Diego lost a great leader. UC San Diego lost a builder. And perhaps its greatest cheerleader. And the research community lost an intellectual giant. When I accepted this job at UC San Diego, I asked David Belshaw, who was the headhunter who recruited me, and I said, David, who can I talk to at UC San Diego who could give me an honest tutorial and a lay of the land at UC San Diego? And without a moment of hesitation, David said, oh, Jeff Elman, of course. You know, he's the Dean of Social Sciences. And I did not know Jeff Elman, but that was the first time that David Belshaw introduced me to Jeff Elman more than 6 years ago. So I arranged to meet Jeff on my very first trip to campus, and long before I had officially joined my job. What I remember of my first meeting is a conversation with a soft-spoken person who extolled the virtues of UC San Diego. Somebody who wanted to listen more than he wanted to talk. Somebody who saw a lot of opportunities and wanted to be the catalyst. Somebody who wanted to be in the center of action. My first significant interaction with Jeff was in the strategic planning process. I really wanted to do this, but he was a skeptic. Jeff had an amazing way about him. He never told me it's a bad idea or don't do it. He would caution me, but at the same time be very encouraging. He was supportive without being overbearing. He questioned without doubting. In fact, I learned a lot in my first few months out here just by watching him and talking to him. And at the end of the process, we had become good friends. And I had gotten used to his counsel, which always was free, but expensive. In fact, I remember him saying that the process had converted him, and he was not a skeptic anymore about the process. That was Jeff, an open-minded faculty member, willing to be convinced whenever it made sense. In fact, I had gotten so used to his counsel that I was afraid he would retire because every so often he would threaten me that he has done enough and he's going to step down. And one day it really happened. He shows up in my office and he says, you know, Pradeep, I'm going to step down. And I asked him, why? Why would you step down? What would you do? He looked at me with a twinkle in his eye and said, you know, you are where you want to be, and I still have some research left in me. In fact, I have some ideas that could be the next breakthrough in cognitive science, and to that I could not say no. And I want to spend more time with Ray and do things. And then he said he wanted to give somebody else and somebody younger the opportunity to lead because he had spent enough time leading the division. And I think that captures Jeff, always thinking about supporting the next generation for the sake of the institution and passing on the baton. So Jeff and I would meet, not often, but when we did meet, we met for a drink that would last a very long time. During our conversation, he would say, you know, I told Ray that I was going to have one drink with Pradeep. Maybe I should text him to let him know it's going to take a little bit longer. And he would text Ray. So the conversation always focused around how does one seed and support new ideas that lead to new areas or department. And he was so proud of cognitive science that that was always the exemplar of what could be done at a place like UC San Diego. Jeff knew and Jeff believed that defining new areas was the power of UC San Diego. And he was afraid that we may lose that ability if we don't practice the craft often enough. And it had been a while since the institution had practiced that craft, at least a decade, maybe 15 years. And after a lot of brainstorming, we both agreed that data sciences could be one such opportunity, but we had to build not just a new area, but we had to build a new way of doing business. We had to build a new administrative structure, and we did not know what it was. So one day, after a while, so this is about a year passes by, he comes to me and says, Pradeep, this time I'm really going to retire. And I'd already stopped him once, and he was doing technology-based learning, but then he got tired, and I comes back and says, I'm not done. I'm going to retire. And at that time I said, Jeff, maybe there's another opportunity here. Give me one more year. Maybe we can create data sciences. And at that time, I had been talking to Taner, I'd been talking to Rajesh, and we had agreed that Taner would support the Data Sciences Institute. So Jeff says, okay, let me check with Ray. And I said, okay, why don't you check with Ray? But why don't Ray and you have a drink with me? So that way, we can both check with Ray. And so this morning, I went back to my calendar, and that day was April 17, 2017, when Ray and Jeff and I met at Bella Vista, and we had a drink. And it was clear as I was talking to both of them, and we were all talking, Ray knew that Jeff wanted to do this, and Jeff knew that that he wanted Ray's support. And it could not have been a better outcome at the end of that evening. There was clear consensus that Jeff was going to do it one more year. So now the job was creating a partnership for Jeff. So creating a partnership between Rajesh and Jeff was ideal for seeding and creating the Data Sciences Institute. Jeff brought his extensive experience, his low-key way of convincing people, his technical credibility, and may I say his gravitas. And Jeff knew that he had Rajesh, the next generation, by his side. That is what he cared about. Jeff and Rajesh did not know each other. And they were both apprehensive. This was like a blind date. And to both I said, trust me. And they went along. And I'm so glad they did. So the most satisfying experience for me, and that lasted another year, was not just watching Jeff make sausage, as they say. Creating data sciences was like making sausage. But watching him sell the sausage. His talk to the Rep Assembly on the vision and strategy of the Halicio Data Sciences Institute will stay with me as a model talk on how to pitch a vision to a large, disparate group of faculty, all of who are skeptics and maybe even skeptical. And as they say, the rest is history. The Halicio Data Sciences Institute was approved in the Rep Assembly. That was the first time that UCSD had given a departmental status to an institute. It was a new way of doing business. It was not just doing new business, it was a new way of doing business, and that is what Jeff wanted. And that was the first day that Jeff had come back after his heart attack, come to work nearly full time. He spent all day on this campus, and he gave an amazing presentation to the Rep Assembly. So I realized very well that Jeff is not here, but I can tell you that his contributions, his ideas, and his strategic thinking will live on at UCSD in the form of several initiatives that he created, and most currently in the form of Halicio Data Sciences Institute. Jeff, wherever you are, I want you to know, we will continue to cherish, we will continue to celebrate your contributions and your impact on this great institution for a very, very long time. Among the many colleagues fortunate enough to know Jeff, and you're going to hear from many of them today, let me introduce to you our Executive Vice Chancellor for Academics, Elizabeth Simmons. She would like to share a few words. Elizabeth?
So Jeff Elman's many accomplishments as a scholar and his formal roles as a leader have been summarized in the program that you have, and they will be touched on by others who knew him during all the many years that he was here on campus. I'd like to just speak briefly about his academic leadership in some less quantifiable dimensions, and those that are not always visible from the outside. I knew Jeff for about 15 months. Starting from the time that he first helped interview me for the EVC role here on campus. And as part of my transition to UC San Diego in the summer of 2017, not knowing I was following in Pradeep's footsteps, I arranged to meet with Jeff for several hours to learn his perspectives on the structures and people of this great university. And this was partly because I knew that he had led so many different units and that he had led many units that were still important and initiatives that were still ongoing on campus: social sciences, cognitive science, online learning, data science. And I knew that he could help me understand how all of those fit into the picture of the entire university and into the pattern of the whole. But it was also because I had seen how he interacted with the Chancellor and how he interacted with others, and I could see he was a wise person. He was somebody whose counsel would be valuable regarding even aspects of campus led by completely different people. And those hours were time very well spent, as all of you may imagine. And they then blended seamlessly into the several ways that I would interact with Jeff over the ensuing year, my first year at UC San Diego. So I spent countless hours working with Jeff and with Rajesh Gupta and with Pradeep Khosla on the guiding principles and founding documents of the Data Science Institute. Jeff and Rajesh and I often found ourselves co-editing Google Docs in the wee hours of the morning. And the four of us then would spend many weekend afternoons working together on the HDSI proposals, principles, guidelines, and long-term strategy on the program for the March launch of the Institute that took place in this very room, and on the slides for Jeff's presentation, his brilliant presentation to the Rep Assembly that declared HDSI to be a true academic unit of the university, unique among the units. Jeff was such a beautiful, clear writer, so quick to see how to translate nuanced ideas, complex ideas, into clear prose. And he could also see the long-term dimensions and implications of the decisions, the many decisions that had to be made before launching the Institute. We all relied on his perception. We relied on his willingness to engage in good-natured, deliberative conversation, maybe debate. And I will always treasure those hours and what I learned from them. Jeff and I also had a number of key conversations about climate issues here at the university and the importance of finding ways to make it possible for the most vulnerable graduate students and faculty and staff to find their footing and succeed. He knew that we still have significant work to do in this realm, and he emphasized that we must, on the one hand, take affirmative steps to give newcomers appropriate mentoring and support, and on the other hand, take corrective measures when the climate is not as welcoming as it should be. And I still draw on his perspective as I work on these issues of inclusion. And finally, Jeff was one of the first people here to welcome me as a friend, to invite me to spend time with him and Ray walking in their beloved Torrey Pines Nature Reserve. Jeff and Ray personally introduced me to every plant, slope, rock, and insect found along several miles of trails in the reserve. And this was an incredibly calming counterpoint to the relentless information overload and the frenetic deadlines of the work environment. I fear that Jeff found me disappointing as a student of botany. But he nonetheless kindly showed me where the trapdoor spiders nest in the reserve, trusting me not to endanger these shy arthropods by revealing the location to anybody else. In all of these ways, Jeff demonstrated himself to be a generous, courageous, and humane leader and mentor. By my reckoning, he welcomed a newcomer into one of his most beloved projects as a way of grounding that newcomer in institutional culture and practice. And he generously accepted her contributions to his project as valid ones that could advance the mission. He provided campus leadership, he prodded campus leadership really, with sort of the impetus to stay focused on the very difficult and long-term issues regarding climate that really require constant attention from all of us for the long haul. And this was a very courageous move on his part, given that he hadn't known me very long at all when he brought it up, and it can be really hard to predict how a given individual, a stranger, will react to those topics. And he also helped a new leader achieve some dynamic balance and grounding amid the tumult of work, providing an essential touchstone of personal connection within the university in San Diego. So I am honored to be able to help celebrate Jeff Elman's life on this autumn day. While I did not work with him as long as many of those in this room today, I loved the time that we did spend together. He touched me deeply, and I will miss him. And I believe that Dean Carol Padden will speak next.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Some of us have known Jeff for a long time. I met him in 1978 when I came here as a graduate student in linguistics. He was my phonetic professor my first quarter at UCSD. 30 years later, I became his associate dean when he asked me to join the Division of Social Sciences as the faculty equity advisor. He caught me by surprise when he made the offer. I'd never thought of myself in that capacity before. But that's how Jeff did everything in his career. He was unconventional through and through. An unconventional scholar, an unconventional colleague, and an unconventional dean. He was an unconventional model of a leader. He broke every rule of an effective leader. He shared his time freely. He saw time as not something to hoard or jealously guard, but to share whenever possible. As generous as he was always efficient and effective. He was the first to apologize if something was done wrongly, insensitively, or thoughtlessly. He once apologized on behalf of the institution. He was compassionate to colleagues, but he could also tell the truth. He did not believe that leaders should say as little as possible in their email. In fact, a lot of us know we would get responses from him that were way longer than we expected. He would give you 5 different ways to think about a problem, and then he would analyze each one of them for you. But above all, the gift he had as a dean was he liked the puzzle of institutions and how to make them work in favor of human beings. He liked building programs, departments, institutes, initiatives, centers, and he did, because he saw a moral imperative to make things possible and to make things good. But I know he liked the exercise of bringing together people to see whatever new ideas they might create. His legacy is here for everyone to see. The first department of cognitive science in the world, transforming a small teaching credential program into a quickly rising in the rankings education studies department. Graduate fellowship in the names of donors like Gary and Jerry Ann Jacobs, who shared his vision for a new kind of university. He persuaded Daniel Yankelovich there should be a center for research to promote social mobility in American society. All of these things he built them durably so that others like myself could step in and pick up from where he left off. After he stepped down as dean, he continued to build because he was compelled to do more, to do better, and to do right, all the way to the end of his life. It was a shock to lose him. He saw this campus not as a lumbering, slow-moving beast of people and buildings, but as the force of possibility on a very large scale. He loved good ideas, and he loved innovative good ideas even better. Each one of us is here today because we all saw that in him. And we know very acutely what we lost in a heartbreaking moment on a summer day. A dear friend and extraordinary human being. And next we have Jim Hollan, Professor of Cognitive Science, speaking on behalf of Jeff's academic department.
Okay, I'm truly honored to be part of the celebration of Jeff. I'll try to be brief. You realize that for professors, that's challenging. It's especially challenging when discussing someone of the stature of Jeff Elman and someone I knew for 40 years. I'll focus on two topics. One is Jeff's impact, and the other is his generosity. Jeff's impact has been truly immense. He's a consummate cognitive scientist. His impact ranges from grappling with, and more importantly, clarifying complex issues like nature and nurture, as he and his colleagues did in their Rethinking Innateness book, to the really seminal work that he did on modeling of time-varying behavior of language or other activities in the development of recurrent neural networks, known in tribute to Jeff as Elman nets, to his pervasive impact that you hear from the other speakers on our university over the years. He, as you've heard, was one of the real leaders in the establishment of the first cognitive science department in the world. He served as chair of that department. He served as dean of social sciences. He helped us create the design lab. And recently, he's been instrumental in the creation of the new Data Sciences Institute. I could go on and on about his impact, but the things that hit me the most about Jeff and his impact was, and really what I value the most, was, as you hear from others, his generosity with his time. We often met for coffee in the early morning. He always seemed to be available to talk about ideas and give advice. A typical example, as Carol pointed out, is you would send Jeff an email late at night or early in the morning, and instead of, almost instantaneously, you would get this treatise, that was elegantly written, that gave you advice about the alternatives and how to pursue them. It was just wonderful. I became convinced over the years that he had some special way of creating time, because there was no way with his responsibilities, with his active research program, that he could have time for all of these things, but somehow he did. His interest, thoughtfulness, and counsel and friendship really knew no bounds. He seemed to be unlimited in giving of that. And I'm sure that many of what you'll hear today will be evidence of that. In conclusion, I just want to, I was reminded of some advice I give to students. Every class I teach, I take a little bit of time on the first class and having gray hair, give my students advice. One of the, I think, most important pieces of advice I give, and actually one of the most practical pieces of advice, is to be really careful about who you hang out with, who you spend time with. And primarily because it's easier to become a person yourself who you admire if you hang out with people that you admire. And I've really tried to follow this advice over the years. And I've been fortunate to be able to spend time with 4 MacArthur Award winners, with 6 Rumelhart Prize winners, Jeff being one of those. But it's the pleasure and the advice I've gotten from Jeff that I value the most. I'm going to miss him. I know that in talking to Rajesh, he has come to similarly value the time he's spent with Jeff as they've collaborated to create this exciting new Data Sciences Institute. So I turn the mic over to Rajesh Gupta.
Thank you, Jim. I am sorry for your loss. This is a phrase I've heard over and again from a number of friends in the last 4 months. Thank you. But it's also the most painful phrase I've ever heard. My last name is not Elman, but it could have been. He and I spent more time with him than my Gupta family in last 2 years. And for the entirety of 2 years, Jeff left with me with lots of memories. Jeff and I could not be more different. He was a firebrand humanist, if there is a person like that. He had been a labor leader, been imprisoned in 25 years ago or so, had demonstrated in Chancellor's office 25 years ago with a 4-year-old baby for daycare. And I was a typical engineer, of technology, brainless technology. Jeff would tell me, Rajesh, when I went to the Chancellor's office, I thought that was my last time. And when I met him, he was a counselor and a mentor to the chancellors. On June 28th, I came back. I cut short a trip to be with my youngest son. That was his birthday. That was not to be. I actually spent time seeing Jeff leave. Among the first people to arrive, I think after Jeremy, was the Chancellor and Elizabeth. And the Chancellor said, "We lost an intellectual giant today." I don't know what Chancellor was thinking. When he asked me, that was in March, by the way, 2017, that you're going to work with Jeff Elman. I think I know what he was thinking now. We had no history of working together. None. Zero. We surely saw the world very differently, through very different eyes, very different lens, very different glasses. But we actually didn't. We were so aligned that by the time, after first few meetings, Jeff will complete my thought and I will complete his sentences. And sometimes we'll switch the roles. Time was always intriguing to me as a concept. So one day, I wrote a long essay and sent it to Jeff. Jeff, there is no thing called time. It is an artificial thing made up by physicists as a variable. Just like a camera takes snapshots to make movies, we need time to understand nature. There is no time. Jeff listened to that essay and wrote to me a long reply. And then he said, that and $5 buys you a toothpick. I had no idea what he was saying. Jeff had worked on time 25 years ago, and his article I read later on. In a word, if there was no time, in a word timeless, Jeff would be here. He would never be gone. Maybe he is, and is listening me to butcher his work about time, which actually was about dynamic memory and recurrent neural networks, things that are becoming very popular. But I also know he's smiling. One of those mischievous smiles Jeff used to have. I don't know if you played hide and seek, somebody who is ahead of you and looks you from the corner. Jeff used to have that smile when in a discussion, he already knew the turn you will take and you will arrive at. And that smile would come on it with a twinkle in his eyes, and I knew he had already read my mind. It might be hard to believe, between the two of us, Jeff was the more excitable one. He had the penchant of a teenager. Once he wrote to me, I would punch anyone in the nose for saying something about integrity of some process we were running. And then he wrote the next sentence, but I realized that will not be very effective. We split a lot of our time meeting people. Jeff would write after his meetings long emails about what happened and this and that. And I told Jeff, please don't write to me anything that does not fit in my iPhone screen, because that's when I see it and I delete it. So he compromised, and we shared Google Docs, where he would discuss things and write things. They were, between the two of us, we could write anything, the guy's full of shit. I still write to those Google Docs, except that there's no one to read. Lots of memories. I think the phrase, friend, philosopher, guide, I did not understand until Jeff walked into my life. And for that, Jeff, I'm very grateful for the memories and the time I was blessed with. It was not very long, but it was a time of growth as a teenager would have. So thank you, Jeff. Carol?
We have next the video of Bob Glushko, who couldn't be here today.
This is Bob Glushko in San Francisco. I'm grateful for the chance to say a few words at this memorial event for Jeff Elman. I looked over the list of participants, and with the possible exception of Jeff's daughter Emily, I think I've known Jeff longer than anyone here. I met Jeff in 1977 when Emily was 2, I believe, when he came to UCSD as an assistant professor of linguistics. I asked him to be a member of my thesis committee, and he was very patient with me to help me learn the phonology and other linguistics I needed for my dissertation research. In 1979, when I got my Ph.D., I went on to a non-academic career, non-traditional career in industry and as consultant and in Silicon Valley. So I didn't have a lot of contact with Jeff for a couple of decades. When I came back to cognitive science in 2000 to set up the Rumelhart Prize to honor my thesis advisor, Dave Rumelhart, I renewed my relationship with Jeff. And I was very happy 7 years later when we awarded the Rumelhart Prize to Jeff Elman, to recognition of his significant theoretical contributions to the understanding of human cognition. A few years later, Jeff came to me and proposed that I create a Glushko Prize in cognitive science to recognize the best new PhDs for their multidisciplinary work in cognitive science. And my first reaction was, sounds a little egotistical to name a prize after yourself, and Jeff laughed and said, every other prize that's funded by someone has their name on it. Yours was called the Rumelhart Prize. I think it's okay to have one called the Glushko Prize. In fact, the symmetry is perfect because the prize for your professor is named after the professor, and the prize for his student would be named after the student. So the student prize could be the Glushko Prize. And so we started the Glushko Prize a few years ago. But I think it's time to have an Elman Prize in cognitive science. The Elman Prize would fit nicely in between the Glushko Prize, which recognizes the best new PhD work in the field, and the Rumelhart Prize, which typically has gone to a senior statesperson in the field. I proposed this idea to the governing board of the Cognitive Science Society at the most recent conference, and it was enthusiastically received, and we're working out the details. But essentially, it would go to someone maybe 10 to 15 years past PhD, 40-ish, and like by analogy with the Fields Medal in mathematics or the Clark Medal in economics, it would be recognizing some rising star in the field at a mid-career point. But not just recognizing them for their scientific achievements. The Elman Prize has to recognize something else about Jeff Elman that we all remember, which is that he was a wonderful mentor. People have said he was the best mentor they ever had. He was generous with his time, patient, non-judgmental. Essentially the kind of person and scientist that we all wanted to be like. I originally thought I would self-fund the Elman Prize just as I fund the Glushko Prize and the Rummelhart Prize, but there have been a number of people who've said they'd like to contribute to some kind of prize like this, and so perhaps we'll set up an endowment here at UCSD, and I might do some matching fund or something like that. But in any event, I'm certain that at the 2020 annual meeting of the Cognitive Science Society, we will award the first Jeff Elman Prize in Cognitive Science. Thank you.
I'm Ken McRae. I've collaborated with Jeff for the last 20 years and a bit. I've been asked to say a few words about Jeff and his research. So as we've heard a lot of, Jeff has made many wonderful contributions to this university, but I think arguably he made had an even bigger impact as a researcher. As is the case with many great scientists, Jeff had a bucket load of fabulous, innovative ideas. He was fearless in terms of getting them out there, and he always saw the big picture. Jeff was an awesome writer, a great writer, as we've already heard. His ability to communicate ideas and to couch things at a high, centrally important theoretical level was second to none. In fact, because of his ability to take what we as mere mortals saw as a pretty neat study and turn it into a study with wildly important, theoretically broad implications, Mary Hare and I used to call him the Fluffmeister, which he didn't really seem to appreciate a whole lot, but it was apt. I know these have been talked about a little bit and are in the program, but over the years, Jeff has made a number of huge contributions to language comprehension, cognitive development, and computational modeling, and I'll just highlight a couple. So in the mid to late 80s, Jeff and Jay McClellan developed the trace model of speech recognition, or spoken word recognition. And it's crazy, actually, that it's still the major model in the area. You talk to lots of people, and they say, yes, it is. 30 years later, which is amazing. It's a very vibrant area of research. In 1996, he was the first author on a collaborative book called Rethinking Innateness, which is another huge contribution. It played a key role in the nature-nurture debate, that is the extent to which language and other abilities are a product of genetics versus environment and learning. This Jeff and his colleagues, one of whom was Liz Bates, took a nuanced, computationally grounded approach that had been absent until that point, and many people might argue it's still absent a great deal. But he's probably best known for simple recurrent networks, as people have already talked about, or SRNs. Everybody calls them Elman networks, except Jeff. If I got that, it might have been the only time he kind of yelled at me. Don't call them Elman networks. Okay. So over the past number of years, when the university wasn't stealing Jeff away, his research passion has been people's knowledge of common events and how event knowledge influences language comprehension or language processing. So again, in this area, he approached core issues in novel ways, providing researchers with interesting new perspectives for thinking about things, and also providing evidence to back up his ideas. So most recently, Jeff's been working on a connectionist model of people's event knowledge, and he's been working on this for a while. He really viewed this as his next big project, and as we now turned out, it turned out to be his last big project. We resubmitted it for like the third time, I think it was, the week before Jeff died. It's since been accepted at Psychological Review, which has been considered the premier journal in psychology for a very long time. Although we can be really happy that this most recent major contribution that emanated from Jeff's mind will be out there for researchers to experience and be influenced by, the timing certainly makes it bittersweet. We have 2 or 3 other articles on the go, actually, at the moment, that we have to get out, that have to be published. But really, the best part of working with Jeff for the past 20 years has absolutely nothing to do with science. What made Jeff so special, and that I've heard many times over, is he was an even better person than a researcher, which does not happen a lot. He is an incredibly warm and kind person. He was generous with his time. He was quick with lavish praise, which I've seen with students many times. And he was a fighter for equity and social justice. Jeff helped, supported, and had a great deal of positive influence on many young scholars, including students, postdocs, and young faculty members. Actually, Ariel Borowski's, who is here today, wrote to me after Jeff died that he was like a parent to me. I owe him so much. Also, as we've heard, he helped, supported, and had a positive influence on a lot of old people, old faculty members as well. I was just at Cognitive Science in July and gave a talk actually that Jeff was supposed to give. It was him and I together, where it was the modeling, and talked to a lot of people. Basically, that was how I spent the entire conference, was talking about Jeff with people. And I was talking with Jay McClellan for quite a while, and Jay said something that I remember, which was, "You're so lucky I got to work with Jeff really closely for only a few years. You got 20 years. And Jay was certainly right. As is the case with many of you here today, my life has been wildly enriched through collaborating with Jeff, and more importantly, having him as a dear friend for a long time. Thank you. Next is, sorry, I almost forgot that part. I almost walked off. Is Jamie Alexandre. Jamie was a Ph.D. student of Jeff's from 2007 to 2014. He runs an education nonprofit organization called Learning Equality. And not surprisingly, Jeff played an instrumental role in helping Jamie get this off the ground.
Thank you, Ken. I wanted to start with some words from fellow student Kim Sweeney, who sums it up well. Jeff was an innovative scientist, a keen thinker, and a kind and generous human. He was one of my main role models for how to do academia. I feel extremely fortunate to have known and worked with him, and heartbroken that he's gone. I know these sentiments are shared by so many of Jeff's many students over the years, many of whom are here today. He believed in us. He believed in our department, a group he fostered and nourished from its early days. He believed in this university and the values it stands for, serving the public, benefiting society as a whole, and especially the most marginalized. As we've heard today, Jeff was not only an academic guide, but also a personal mentor and role model. He always made sure that I was taking care of myself and not overworking. He took the time, along with Ray, to get to know my parents when they visited, and he was always one of their favorite people as well. He was always there. He was always encouraging, and he always cared. As we've also heard, Jeff was also a troublemaker, in the best sense of the word, and would always take a stand for what he knew was right. I think in your program it talks about his run-ins with the FBI around phone hacking, but another case that I heard about a few years ago from him was when he was working to clear his record from when he was arrested in the 70s at a protest. He had intervened to protect a pregnant woman who was being manhandled by police. He inspired us all to be better, to be bolder, and to take care of each other. I wanted to share an excerpt of a letter I wrote to Jeff when I heard of his passing. My heart breaks because the world still has so much to learn from you. But just as in the recurrent neural networks you invented, we'll make sure to take everything you taught us and feed it back in, again and again, changing hearts and minds, cascading and echoing across time and through history. As we glide through the state space of our lives, you forever tweaked the weights to guide us towards an ever better world. You wove a tapestry of minds that strive towards a common goal, a more vibrant world, a more just world, a world where everyone can flourish and learn. This will be your legacy, the hearts you touched, the minds you changed, the seeds you planted. Above all, I learned from you what true mentorship looks like. You were there when I needed you, and when I didn't, you stepped out of the way. You let me try things and fail, because you knew that the wisdom of having walked to the end of a dead end is far greater than have been told not to try. You had my back when others tried to push me off course. You taught me that life can't be all work, but that work can be joyful too. You tended to me like a garden, or like a neural network being trained, making sure the conditions were right and that I had what I needed, then letting me learn and grow on my own. You put far more faith in me than I deserved, and as a result, I strove to live up to the challenge. I want to close by quoting Jeff himself. That's probably the biggest gift you can give people, to take your passion and share it, and have things beat in the hearts of others that beat in yours. To have things beat in the hearts of others that beat in yours. I'd like to welcome Dean Padden back up.
Marta Kutas could not be here today. She's in Boston, being installed as the new fellow in the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She's provided a video recording of a poem she's written in Jeff's honor.
Jeffrey Locke Elman had a lock on who he was, an advocate and activist, a sometimes pragmatic, enthusiastic idealist, a founder of a new discipline and theorist, a formidable challenger to any strict developmental nativist, a Rommel Hart Prize, quote, contributions to the theoretical foundations of human cognition recipient, a percipient, eloquent, extraordinarily lucid speaker, a computational simulator and science breakthrough seeming streaker. He made it look so easy, matter of course, breezy. A master of the platform, substance and form, lickety-split quick, an artificial neural nets pioneer with a long and illustrious scientific and administrative career. A walking PC mag with a quiet techno-gadget swag, arguably an iconoclast. A vintage, or was it, quote, any car enthusiast. A thought-provoking author, a doting father, a son, a brother, a husband, a colleague, a spouse, a dependable friend, a distinguished professor with few in his league, Ivy or otherwise, a wise department chair, an effective center director, and a social science dean, a perpetual student, the likes of which are few and far between, a Torrey Pines docent, a Mission Bay sailor, and in the past year, a man bent on becoming a Japanese silk embroidery artist tailor, a loving grandpa, an avid storyteller, leaving warm hearts and big smiles along with many a trace, insights and intuitions, contextually driven, temporally fed premonitions, predictions about what's likely to follow and with what probability, impacting linguistics, development, cognitive science, education, and psychology, among other domains where SRN, aka Elman nets, remain crucial to their computational methodology. Hidden units feeding back onto themselves in successive time steps to provide memory. Unequivocally revolutionary. Jeffrey Locke Elman had a lock on who he was, a man of causes and dedication, not becauses or precedents without explanation, a man who favored careful thought, considered contemplation, deep and often interdisciplinary examination, a man of principles, duty, and determination. A complex, multifaceted, intensely private man who believed in common sense and civil disobedience, protests and sit-ins and working to right wrongs from within. An eloquent man with an infectious, optimistic grin. Regarding the future of cognitive science, data science, and universities, and the value of tempered defiance, if you please. A man outwardly calm but brimming with energy, who could not tolerate moments of either ennui or lethargy. Creating lists and organizing info for his, quote, heart rehab crew, with all his heart, being himself through and through. Inherently diplomatic and politic, a firm but gentle when requested critic, unafraid to admit that he was less certain just what defines a word, if they exist at all, not as absurd a question as this may seem. A teacher's teacher and a student's dream. Cool, calm, collected, and usually in control, a man with an insatiable curiosity, harboring a periodically restless soul, a scholar, a colleague, and a collaborator enviably well-connected, socially conscious and caring, generous and helpful, never sparing on gratitude, and effusively thankful, decent and kind, with a razor-sharp, breathtakingly nimble mind. A man of considerable effective action and few regrets, though I did hear him more than once rue the lack of another garage for what to me seemed like a car entourage. A man of vision, regardless of the position, always ready to review, consider, study, discuss, and focus every blur, initiate, develop, create, adopt, co-opt, push back, hack a way forward unimpeded, towards some academic, scientific, educational, or societal goal, to make things whole and provision as needed. A linguistics, cognitive science, and JDP, LCD distinguished professor. A soft-handed, compassionate, ever-busy, yet accessible mentor. A great listener and an astute, non-threatening questioner who routinely zeroed in on the essence. A non-intimidating but formidable presence. An appreciated and respected co-and advisor. To many a grad seeking a doctoral degree, investigating topics ranging from A to Z. Equal access to computer-assisted learning and digital education, successful word learning, working memory, and phonological representation, bilingualism, learnability, and speech visualization, ordered chaos, animacy and object relatives, white matter connection lengths and brain organization, understanding syllables, event knowledge and sentence comprehension, recurrent net mathematical realization, to dogs at play, an impressively broad research array, wouldn't you say? Jeffrey Locke Elman had a lock on who he was, an insatiable student who dove in deep, almost obsessed. His knowledge gaps of science facts or artifacts potpourri amply redressed. Whether it be the flora and fauna of the reserve at Torrey Pines, the exquisite curves and lines of Japanese silk embroidery, MOOCs, flipped classrooms, and online education delivery, eye tracking, skiff sailing, gourmet cooking, or the human genetic livery. Always jumping in with 3 feet, wanting to be more than complete, scouring, devouring information with exhilaration, and then rethinking, concepts innovatively relinking, about innateness, modeling speech recognition, language processing and language acquisition, generalization in the face of limited information, language learnability, finding structure in time, close probability, and the role of event knowledge. What might be the shape of tomorrow's college? The mental lexicon and how we determine what a word might mean, always with an erudite, academic mien. Jeffrey Locke Elman was an unconventional, consummate, interdisciplinary thinker who had exquisite tastes in foundational issues, who issued genuinely novel, simple, yet sophisticated contributions, and equally impactful technical T-Learn distributions, which together offered elegant, testable, and often tested solutions. Jeff's greatness was in his ability to conceptualize, then concretize. For example, figuring out that in networks that did not work might lurk answers to long-standing questions about the developing mind, finding the grammars with multiple embeddings and long-distance dependencies which networks with much memory could never learn, were not spurned by more restricted neural nets with rapidly fading memories, but picked up with relative ease, telling us all the importance of starting small. He was a man invariably in the know about what was happening, what if anything needed doing, and to whom to go, who believed in everybody's right to take part, to get a fair start, and to play the game, whatever their heritage, ethnicity, gender, or level of fame, who believed in diversity, equity, and inclusion, who eschewed discrimination, illogical reasoning, confounds leading to faulty conclusion, who appreciated history, context, and undeniable interpretations, a man who approached bias and inequity with genuine consternation. A man who acknowledged his privilege, very much aware, for example, that in the heat of the summer, no matter his position, he could without a thought, and certainly no demission, wear shorts and a t-shirt, unlike his female counterparts who would not be seen in less than slacks or a skirt. Unspoken inequities in the perceived dress code, clearly unfair. Likewise, Elman was a man passionate about sexual harassment training, actively straining to drain those particular swamps, past and present, adamant about creating safe environments throughout academe. Gender pay equity was yet another Elmanian social theme. Why was there a 20% salary differential even under his social science dean watch? Were the reasons preferential, or Jeff saw this as a blotch whose source he wanted to locate and then by policy irrevocably eradicate? Jeff was a scholar with a strong commitment to fundamental principles that were intellectually daunting, on which he made real progress, though never vaunting, growing continually in intellectual range, depth, and influence with a contagious smile, sparkling blue eyes, and an ever-welcoming countenance. A man who loved to talk and walk and give advice, no need to ask twice, seeming to know just what to say or what model to build, theoretically, computationally, mechanistically, scientifically, technically skilled, at looking for simplicity, starting small but never slow, deeply appreciating what he didn't know, rarely adamant about what must be so, very much open for directions to grow, sowing the seeds of friendship, community, and collegiality as if it were his committed responsibility. A historian and anchor of our UCSD Cognitive Science Department, a model of professional comportment. A man who loved to chat about this and that, business and pleasure, people, places, and things, who was unusually good at remembering names and recognizing faces. Others might find it difficult or forget. Jeff did not, although there were a lot. A man who always seemed to have time to stop and say hello, hi, how are you, and do you know? Give my best to, could be any of you. We will miss his ready smile, creative brain, and helpful attitude, his genuine gratitude, good spirit, friendship, and willingness to take the time to listen and understand. We will deeply miss the one-of-a-kind, uniquely Jeffrey Locke Elman brand.
Good afternoon. I'm Emily Elman, Jeff's daughter, and with me is my brother, Jeremy Elman. I feel incredibly privileged to be here today and to listen to the speakers that preceded me. It's wonderful to hear about my dad's professional accomplishments. And we hope to be able to add or offer a different or perhaps complementary perspective and describe his personal accomplishments. Over the past few months, one of the things we've heard said over and over was about his ability to listen, and to listen without judgment. That was true. My brother and I relied on the thoughtful, considered guidance he provided after quietly listening to our challenges, difficulties, and youthful angst. But in addition to being a good listener, he was a good storyteller. He had one of the most remarkable lives of anyone I've ever had the privilege of knowing. I'm not sure whether it was his remarkable upbringing that made him such a good storyteller, or whether because of his storytelling, his childhood seemed so remarkable. Probably some of both. My dad was the child of two storytellers. Tex and Irv, as he called them, were writers and producers and directors of film, theater, and television. They crossed the country as a family between Los Angeles and New York 20 times before my dad was 16, as the industry moved between the two cities. As my brother reminded me, Tex and Irv were the type of parents that considered rules more a gentle suggestion than something you had to follow. They were both irreverent and slightly eccentric and loved language, and I believe these qualities formed my dad's professional and personal life. While he chose a more conventional professional path, language was obviously central to his work. And perhaps less obvious, his quick wit, humor, and glee in occasionally inappropriate things were a legacy passed down from his parents. One of our favorite stories from his childhood was his correspondence with multiple British estate agents when he was about 14 or 15. Noticing an advertisement in the back of a magazine, my dad wrote the agents inquiring about the purchase of an island in the Outer Hebrides. The agents' responses included information about the castle, number of sheep, and number of laborers available on each island. The agents addressed the letter to Jeffrey Locke Elman, Esquire, as he had identified himself in his original letter. And Ray just unearthed those letters and correspondence, and we were sort of amazed about the amount of work these agents put in to this research and responding, little knowing that it was a 14-year-old kid from the Pacific Palisades in California. Needless to say, a purchase was never made. Some of you may be familiar with my dad's political and not so political run-ins with the law. He had a thing for computers and phones. When we were growing up, we generally had 4 or 5, at a minimum, computers scattered around the house, and it wasn't ever clear why they were there or what they did, at least to us. We also had a number of phones, not working phones, but phones stolen from various places, including elevators. Sort of safety issues around that, sort of another issue. It's likely not a secret now, but my dad hacked into the telephone system using inward operators to place calls all over the world while in college, raising the attention of the FBI, who were concerned that he was an operative of for the mob. And when the FBI knocked on his Harvard dorm room and told him the jig was up, he famously replied, "Which jig?" And this story, including the treasure hunt adventure he embarked upon to build this blue box, became chapter 1 of the book, Exploding the Phone. But before that, though, it was one of our most favorite childhood memories or stories. While he was getting in trouble with the law for phone hacking, he was also getting in trouble for his political activism. While activism of such a nature wasn't all that unique for the era, he pursued it with a curiosity and commitment that he did with everything else in his life. That combination of curiosity and commitment, which I think could be more accurately described as obsessiveness, was at the core of my dad's being. These are my memories. Endless apple pies, baked until he had perfected the recipe, then never to make the apple pie again. Easter projects making intricately detailed, hand-carved, blown-out Ukrainian Easter eggs. A trip to London where we saw Queen Mary's dollhouse when I was 11 that inspired a decades-long building of my very own 3-story Victorian dollhouse wired for electricity that incidentally didn't ever actually get finished until I had left for college, and then he donated it to the UCSD daycare where both my brother and I went. Perfecting the creation of fake IDs for my brother and his friends. As children, he intended to indulge our interests, like endlessly driving Jeremy and his friends to different skateboarding spots. And I think this was in large part because of his ongoing passion and exploration of his own interests. And as Marta mentioned, whether it was learning Japanese embroidery, sailing with Ray, or Ray's and his recent work with the Torrey Pines Nature Reserve. And of course, this was all reflected in his relationship with his 4 grandchildren. After learning how to make holiday hats out of paper bags at a dean's office party, he spent 2 days in Portland creating these elaborate hats with my children. And with Jeremy's children, he continued our grandfather Irv stories of a character named Heather Feather, and started a new story of the Grumble Nuts who lived among the bushes and trees at Kate Sessions Park. And when he watched a preschool musical performance, he reported back that it was simply amazing. And you knew that he was sincere about all of these things. He didn't do anything halfway. And while sometimes his obsessiveness took him away from us, when he was focused and committed on you, it felt like nothing else. You felt like the luckiest person on earth. So thank you. And thank you for being here this afternoon. I think we now have time for a reception outside. So thank you again.
Thanks, Pradeep.